Welcome back to Prime Wealth. We're so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Today we've got a really exciting topic lined up.
Right? We're diving into passive income ideas that actually work. And let me tell you, this could really change the game for a lot of you out there.
For sure. Many folks think passive income is just a dream, but it's totally achievable, especially if you're over 40 and looking to secure your financial future.
Exactly. And it's not just about making money while you sleep. It's more about creating financial freedom, right?
Yes. And we'll be covering some practical strategies that you can start exploring today, like real estate, dividend stocks, and even digital products.
Oh, I'm excited about the digital products. There are so many possibilities, and they can be surprisingly accessible.
Definitely. And we'll also talk about some common misconceptions. I think a lot of people hold back because they think it's too complicated.
Right. But it really doesn't have to be. We're here to break it all down for you in a way that makes sense.
So whether you're looking to supplement your income or just want to explore new avenues, stick around.
Yeah, you won't want to miss this. Let's jump right in and start exploring these ideas. So, Alex, today we're diving into something really exciting, passive income ideas. But before we get into the nitty-gritty, why do you think this topic is especially important for folks over 40 right now?
Well, Jordan, it's a pivotal time in many people's lives. I mean, statistically speaking, a lot of people are starting to think about retirement, or at least how to make their money work harder for them, especially as we're living longer.
Right. I read somewhere that, the average life expectancy is creeping up, so people need to stretch their savings further.
Exactly. And that can feel really daunting. I mean, if you're looking at, say, a 30-year retirement, you want to ensure you have enough funds to support that lifestyle without relying solely on a fixed income.
Yeah, that's a huge concern. I've talked to friends who are in their late 40s, early 50s, and they're starting to feel the pressure. Some of them are like, I never thought I'd have to worry about money at this age.
Absolutely. And it's not just about money, it's about peace of mind. It's one thing to have a steady paycheck, but when you start thinking about the future, passive income can really help alleviate some of that stress.
I totally get that. And I think there's this emotional aspect too. When people hit their 40s, they start reflecting on their goals, their dreams.
Right. I mean, maybe someone dreamed of traveling more or spending more time with family, but the reality of a 9-to-5 can really put a damper on that.
Exactly. So having those passive income streams can really provide that flexibility.
It does. So let's say someone's been saving into a 401k. That's great. But what happens when they want to retire and their lifestyle needs change? They might want to downsize, travel, or even start a new hobby that requires some funding.
Yeah, and I've heard stories of people who are forced to go back to work because they didn't plan ahead. That can be really disheartening.
For sure. And then there's the trend we're seeing with the gig economy. More people are finding ways to monetize their skills outside of their main jobs, which is a great way to create those passive income streams.
Totally. I mean, I know someone who turned their love for gardening into a small online course. They're making money while they sleep.
That's a perfect example. And it's not just about the money. It's about passion, too. Finding something you love and turning it into an income stream can be so fulfilling.
Yeah, it makes retirement feel less like the end of something and more like the beginning of a new adventure, right?
Exactly. And think about it. If you're over 40, you likely have a wealth of experience and knowledge that you can leverage.
Right. I know a lot of people have skills from their careers that could translate into consulting or freelancing opportunities.
Yes, and that can create a sort of hybrid lifestyle, working a little, but also enjoying life a lot more. It's all about balance.
And then there are also real estate opportunities. I mean, renting out a property can generate that passive income.
Absolutely, and with the right approach, it can be a great investment. But it's important to highlight that it's not just about jumping into something without understanding it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I've seen people get burned by real estate because they didn't do their homework.
Right. But that's why we're talking about this today, to help guide folks through the process and make informed decisions.
And I think, especially now, with the rise of online platforms, it's easier than ever to explore different avenues for passive income.
Yes, there's so much information available, but it can also be overwhelming. That's why having a clear strategy is key.
And I think it's worth noting that the emotional impact of this can be huge. People want to feel secure, they want to enjoy their life.
Exactly. It's about building that safety net so they can feel free to explore their passions without the weight of financial worries holding them back.
I love that. It's not just about the money, it's about the lifestyle it can create.
Yes. And as we look at the future, it's clear that diversifying income sources can be a game changer, especially as traditional retirement models shift.
And it's exciting. I mean, the possibilities are endless if you think creatively.
Definitely. So for anyone listening, if you're feeling that itch to explore passive income, just know that there are real, actionable strategies out there.
Right. And it's never too late to start.
Exactly. And that's what we'll dive into next. Some core strategies that can really work for you, no matter where you're starting from.
I can't wait to get into that. So, Alex, we've been talking about passive income ideas, and I think it's time we dive into some core strategies and the rules of thumb that can really help people get started, right?
Absolutely, Jordan. The first thing to keep in mind is that passive income doesn't mean no work. It's more about setting things up so that you're earning money with less ongoing effort.
Right, you put in the work up front and then it pays off later. So what's the first strategy you'd recommend?
Well, one solid strategy is real estate investing. It sounds a bit daunting, but it's a proven way to generate passive income. You can start with something simple, like a rental property.
Oh, yeah. So, buying a small duplex or a single-family home, right?
Exactly. And the key here is to make sure you're cash flow positive. So let's say you buy a property for $200,000 and you rent it out for $1,500 a month. You'd need to consider your mortgage payment, property taxes, and any maintenance costs.
So if your total expenses are $1, $200 a month, you're making $300 in passive income, right?
Yes, that's a great example. And remember, it can also appreciate over time, which is a bonus. But, it's important to do your homework before jumping in.
Totally. So what's another strategy you think folks should consider?
Another fantastic option is dividend investing. You can buy stocks that pay dividends, which is essentially a share of the company's profits. It's like getting paid just for owning the stock.
That sounds appealing. How does someone get started with that?
Well, first, you'd want to look for companies with a history of paying dividends consistently. Think about established companies like utilities or consumer goods brands. Those that are less likely to fluctuate wildly.
So it's kind of like you're looking for stability in your investments?
Exactly. And a good rule of thumb is to aim for companies with a dividend yield of around 3% to 5%. That way, you're getting a decent return without taking too much risk.
And how often do those dividends get paid out?
Most companies pay dividends quarterly, but some do it annually. So it can be a nice little bonus every few months,
Yeah, that sounds nice. So what about those who might want to go down a more hands-off route, say, investing in funds?
Great point. That's where index funds and ETFs come in. They track a specific market index, like the S&P 500, and often pay dividends, too. They're a good way to diversify your investments without having to pick individual stocks.
So it's like investing in a whole basket of stocks instead of just one, right?
Exactly. Plus, they generally have lower fees compared to actively managed funds, which is another bonus. Just keep an eye on the expense ratios.
Right. So if someone wants to go the fund route, what's a good percentage of their portfolio to allocate to these funds?
A common rule of thumb is the 60-40 split. 60% in stocks, 40% in bonds. But, it really depends on your risk tolerance and financial goals.
But that's a good starting point, for sure. What other strategies do you think work well?
Another solid strategy is creating digital products. If you have a skill or knowledge in a specific area, you could create an online course or write an ebook. Once it's created, it can generate income for years.
Oh, that's a great idea. I mean, you put in the effort up front, and then it's just about marketing it, right?
Exactly. And there are platforms like Udemy or Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing that make it easier to get started. You can reach a wide audience without needing to do everything yourself.
And I guess you could promote it on social media or through a blog, too.
Absolutely. Just remember to focus on a niche that you're passionate about. That way, it'll be easier to create quality content that resonates with people.
So it sounds like there are a lot of different avenues to explore. What about something more traditional, like bonds?
Oh yes, bonds can be a great way to earn passive income too. When you buy a bond, you're essentially lending money to an entity like the government or a corporation, and they pay you interest over time.
So the interest is like your passive income, right?
Exactly. And while bonds typically offer lower returns than stocks, they tend to be less risky. A common rule of thumb is to consider your age. The percentage of your portfolio in bonds should be roughly equal to your age.
So if you're 50, then 50% in bonds makes sense?
Right. It's a simple way to balance risk as you get closer to retirement. But it's always good to revisit and adjust as needed.
Got it. So what's a simple tool or habit that can help people manage these different sources of passive income?
Great question. One effective habit is to set up a budgeting system. Use apps like Mint or YNAB to track your income and expenses. This can help you see where your money is coming from and where it's going.
And I guess that can help you identify areas where you can invest more in those passive income streams, right?
Exactly. And regular check-ins like monthly or quarterly reviews can help you stay on track with your goals.
So it sounds like a mix of strategies and regular monitoring is key. But I'm sure there's also some common pitfalls people should watch out for, right?
Definitely. We'll get into those next. So, when we talk about passive income ideas, there are definitely some common pitfalls that people can fall into.
Oh, absolutely. It's easy to get excited about the idea, right? But then things don't always go as planned.
Exactly. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is not doing enough research before jumping in. Like, people hear about a great investment opportunity and they dive in head first without really understanding it.
Right. Like, say someone hears about real estate investing and they rush to buy a rental property without really knowing the market.
Yeah, or the costs involved. I had a client once who bought a duplex thinking it would be a breeze, but they didn't factor in repairs, property management fees, or even the time it would take to find tenants.
Oof, that sounds rough. So what happened with that client?
Well, they ended up being overwhelmed. They were spending more time and money than they had anticipated. And it turned into a bit of a nightmare for them.
That's such a good point. So how can someone avoid that pitfall?
Well, first of all, it's all about education. Spend time learning about the market, and maybe even connect with other investors to get their insights.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to have a solid budget in place before you make any moves.
Definitely. Budgeting can't be overlooked. You need to know what you can afford and what you can't.
And speaking of budgeting, another common mistake I see is not considering the long-term costs associated with passive income streams.
Right. People often think about the initial investment, but forget about ongoing expenses. For example, with online businesses, there are hosting fees, marketing costs, and maintenance.
Oh, for sure. I remember a friend who started a blog thinking it would just bring in money like magic. But she ended up spending so much on ads and redesigns that she barely broke even.
Exactly. And that's a classic case of underestimating the effort and investment required. It's really important to have a realistic view of what you're getting into.
So true. And another mistake I see is people putting all their eggs in one basket.
Yes. Diversification is key, right? If you're relying solely on one source of passive income, like a single rental property or one investment, it can be risky.
Totally. If something goes wrong, you could be left high and dry.
I once had a client who invested all their savings into a startup they believed in. And, well, the startup failed. They lost a significant portion of their savings.
That's heartbreaking. So how can folks recognize those danger signs?
Well, one sign is if you're feeling overly stressed or anxious about your investment. If it's causing you sleepless nights, it might be time to reassess.
Yeah, and if you realize you're not diversifying, that's a red flag, for sure.
Exactly. And I think another pitfall is ignoring the need for a backup plan. Things can change quickly in life.
Right, like unexpected expenses or market shifts. It's important to have a contingency plan in place.
Definitely. I had another client who relied solely on dividend stocks for passive income, and when the market took a downturn, their income dropped significantly.
Wow, that must have been tough. So what do you suggest for folks who find themselves in this situation?
Well, first, it's about reassessing your portfolio and income streams. Maybe it's time to explore other options.
Like what?
Well, you could look into diversifying into different asset classes, like bonds, real estate, or even starting a side gig that can bring in extra income.
Yeah, and I think it's also about finding a balance. Maybe you start small with different investments and see how they perform.
Exactly. And, it's important to stay informed and be adaptable. Markets change, and so should your strategies.
For sure. And another thing to consider is getting professional advice, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed.
Absolutely. A financial advisor can help you navigate those tricky waters and develop a strategy that aligns with your goals.
And it's okay to ask for help. We all have different strengths, right?
Right. And remember, it's never too late to make changes. Even if you've made mistakes in the past, you can learn from them and create a better plan moving forward.
That's such an encouraging point. So what's the takeaway here for our listeners?
Well, I think it's about being proactive, staying informed, and not being afraid to pivot when things aren't working.
Exactly. And take your time. There's no rush to jump into something that could have a significant impact on your financial future.
Well said, Jordan. So for anyone looking to explore passive income ideas, just remember to do your research, diversify, and keep an open mind.
And don't forget, it's all a learning process. You can turn those mistakes into valuable lessons for the future.
Absolutely. So let's keep that momentum going. In our next segment, we'll dive into some practical steps to start building those passive income streams effectively.
Can't wait. So Alex, we've talked about some great passive income ideas today. But what are the next steps for someone looking to get started?
Yeah, that's a really important question, Jordan. I think the first step is to just pick one idea that resonates with you, right? Don't feel like you have to tackle everything at once.
Totally agree. It can be overwhelming. I mean, if you try to do too much, you might end up not doing anything at all.
Exactly. So let's say you're interested in real estate, for example. You could start small. Maybe look into rental properties or even REITs, which are real estate investment trusts.
Yeah, REITs are great because you can invest in real estate without having to buy a whole property, right?
That's right. Just do a little research on platforms like Fundrise or Realty Mogul. They make it pretty easy to get started with smaller amounts of money.
And what about apps or tools for those who want to dive into dividend stocks?
Good point. Apps like Robinhood or Acorns can be great for that. They allow you to start investing with really low fees and even offer educational resources to help you understand the market better.
Yeah, and I love that Acorns automatically invests your spare change. It's like, a way to start investing without even thinking about it.
Exactly. And if someone's looking to build a more hands-off approach, there are robo-advisors like Betterment or Wealthfront. They handle the investing for you based on your goals and risk tolerance.
So it sounds like there are plenty of avenues to explore. What about something more traditional, like, say, writing a book or creating an online course?
Oh, those are fantastic ideas. Starting a blog or a YouTube channel can be a great way to share your knowledge and eventually monetize that content. You can use platforms like Teachable or Udemy to create courses.
Right, and for writing a book, there's self-publishing through Amazon or even using a blog to build an audience first, which could help in marketing the book later.
Exactly. And when it comes to writing or creating, the key is consistency. Setting aside a little time every week to work on your project can really pay off down the road.
Yeah, I think building that habit is crucial. It doesn't have to be a huge commitment, just something manageable, like an hour a week.
Absolutely. And don't forget about networking. Connecting with others in your field can open up new opportunities, like collaborations or mentorships, which can be invaluable.
That's such a good point, Alex. So let's say someone's interested in affiliate marketing. What's a good first step for them?
Well, they could start by identifying a niche they're passionate about, then create a website or a blog around that. There are plenty of resources online about affiliate marketing, like blogs or even YouTube tutorials that can guide you through the process.
And then, once they've got some content, they can join affiliate programs like Amazon Associates.
Exactly. And it's all about being authentic. You want to promote products you truly believe in, so your audience trusts your recommendations.
Yeah, trust is key, right? So what about books or resources that someone could pick up to learn more about passive income?
Great question. I'd recommend Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. It really shifts your mindset about money and investing. Another good one is The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. It's very straightforward.
Those are both classics. And there's also The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which really dives into creating income streams and automating your life.
Absolutely. And don't forget about podcasts and online courses. There's so much free content out there now. You can really learn a lot without spending a dime.
Right, and I think just surrounding yourself with the right information can help build that positive mindset around finances.
Exactly. And speaking of mindsets, it's really important to celebrate your small wins, whether that's making your first investment or completing your first blog post.
Yeah, I love that. It keeps you motivated and reminds you that you're making progress, no matter how small.
For sure. And remember, it's okay to start small. The important thing is to start, and then you can scale up as you feel more confident.
So true. And as we wrap up, I hope everyone feels encouraged to take those first steps. It's all about progress, not perfection, right?
Exactly, Jordan. Just take it one step at a time, and before you know it, you'll be on your way to building those passive income streams.
Well, thank you, Alex, for all your insights today. I think our listeners are going to feel inspired to get started.
My pleasure, Jordan. I'm excited for everyone to take action and start their journey toward financial independence.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Let's take those first steps together. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Wow, Alex, that was such a great discussion on passive income ideas.
Yeah, it really was, Jordan. I mean, we covered some solid options, right?
Absolutely. So let's quickly recap what we talked about. First up, we mentioned that investing in dividend stocks can be a really effective way to earn passive income.
Right, and it's all about finding those reliable companies that pay dividends consistently.
Exactly. And then there's peer-to-peer lending, which can be a bit newer for folks. But it's interesting how it connects borrowers with investors, right?
Definitely. And it's a great way to potentially earn higher returns. Though, of course, there are risks involved, so being informed is key.
Yes! And we also touched on creating digital products, like ebooks or online courses. That can be super rewarding once you put in the initial work.
For sure. Once they're out there, it's like they can just keep generating income without much ongoing effort.
And let's not forget about real estate crowdfunding. It's a way to invest in real estate without the headaches of being a landlord, right?
Exactly. It's a fascinating way to diversify your portfolio without needing a ton of capital up front.
So, if listeners are feeling inspired, remember, it's all about taking those first steps, right? Small actions can lead to big results over time.
Absolutely, Jordan. Just start where you are and build from there.
And if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your ideas on passive income.
And if you know someone over 40 who could benefit from this info, don't hesitate to share the podcast with them.
Yes! And next time, we'll dive deep into rental property investing.
That's going to be exciting. So make sure to tune in.
Thanks so much for joining us today, everyone.
Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Bye for now.